it would be the upload process that causes that page to be generated initially. And get page would be for any subsequent access to that same content. Any questions? Okay. Cool. So this is based on experience at IMEME. I've seen a lot of different database systems developed for websites, and the one that ultimately worked best out of all of the ones that I've worked with was the one that I built at IMEME, and that was a single table for all of the data items, and that single table contained one row each for every object, and objects could be of multiple different types. In fact, in our system, our user data and our other content data was all stored in the same table, and so it didn't matter whether it was a music file or video file, or a group or a playlist. All of those were stored in the same table alongside the users, and the typing information was stored as a value within that table.
You just stored serialized objects for everything?
Essentially, yeah. We actually built all of our data access API ourselves. So we would instantiate objects within the system once we pulled the data across. So
you never have performance problems with a non-relational database like that?
Well, so it is relational. It's just not normalized. It's not normalized in the typical way. So the table structure of the database doesn't look anything at all like what we were instantiating on the client, on the browser end of things. But what was really efficient for it was that we could very easily access all of the items that we needed to build a page, because it was all sort of pulled with the same type of data requests. So,
So like, what were the columns of your table?
Well, so essentially, we basically had a very, very simple, I should probably have created a slide for it, a very simple table structure where we had an identifier, and we broke that identifier into two parts. And sort of we called it a to ID and a from ID and a to ID. And then the main other part was just the payload. So it was an ID composed of two pieces and the data payload. And we also had a type. So so basically, an entire user profile could be requested from the database just by asking all of the rows that had a given from ID. Well, so basically, we came up with this idea that links were as important in the system as anything else for our social network. So we wanted to represent any kind of content that was associated with a user in the same way that we represented links. So so a link between two users basically had in the from ID the originator of that link, and the to ID the recipient of that link. So if I was friends with you in Facebook or in IMEME, there would be a database entry that had in the first column my ID, in the second column your ID, and in the payload it could have any comments that were associated with the link between me and you. And so any other data item in the database, like my first name or last name or something like that, we actually created a special TOID that represented first names, a special TOID that represented last names. So we created a kind of a dictionary of all of the special attributes that we wanted to associate with a given type of entity, and created rows in the database for it. So it was an extremely denormalized database from to get back to your question about whether this caused performance problems. But actually it allowed very, very quick construction of user profiles, and also very quick access to all of the profiles that were associated with with all of your friends, or all of the items in a playlist, or all of the groups that were related to another group. So basically, at IMEME, and I think in general, in any social network, the notion of the link being a first-class entity in the system is a really important one. And we took it to the sort of ultimate extreme by saying that every other item, attribute of a person in a system was a sort of a link, a special kind of link. And then whenever we wanted to store things like video or music or whatever, we stored that as an external entity in a file system, and the link would actually reference that file.
So for like a user account, what would be the two of the problem?
So for a user account, basically